And a big thank you, Zafar Saab. Zafar Saab and I have known each other for 8.5 years, and he is a mentor. He is a great person, a great professional. I have learned a lot from him. And in fact, my first book launch for The Rose Within took place in this very room 6 years ago now. And Zafar Saab was the co-host for that as well. So, sir, thank you so much for your kind words and for always offering your moral support. And with that, I also thank the rest of Team Accelerate and Immersive as well for everything. Junaid Saab, thank you so much for being the guest of honor. I profoundly am thankful to you for taking out time. I know that you're a very busy person. As I move on with my speech, I will tell the audience to what extent does the theatre actually mean to me. It means the world to me. And which is one of the reasons why I had approached you and Zia Saab. So thank you so much for comparing me to the likes of Edgar Allan Poe, etc. Means a lot. I think you're all just being very kind. I'm just very humbled. So thank you so much to everybody. And I should have said this at the very outset. Thank you to each and every one of you for being here. I know that most of you had to leave work early. I know that some of you might not even be feeling well. I hope you're not bored by this stage, and I know that there was a bit of a delay, so thank you so much for bearing with us. Okay, as I move on, I'm just going to keep my speech very brief because I know that I'll be performing, well, 2 performances. So I'm just going to say very briefly, I grew up in England. I moved to England when I was 13, and I lived there for the bulk of my life. And apart from being in central London, I've been in some of the very quaint English countryside towns. And most of you who've been to England, or even if you haven't been to England, if you've just seen it in movies, you would know that modern day England isn't so modern. You actually feel like you're in a bygone era, which is how I felt in England. There are many people there, even in this day and age, who stay away from technology, especially some of the senior people who reside in the countryside. And whilst studying over there, whilst living over there, I was greatly influenced by them, greatly influenced by the culture. I studied the Gothic tradition for my A-levels, and in fact my tutor, Cambridge-educated Mr. Steve Bedford, and I have to mention him for a very important reason. I've been in touch with him for some 20 years now, and this man has had a massive influence on my life, and I say massive because he taught me the Gothic tradition. This was his introduction. He's a very down-to-earth man, and each time I've written a book, he's reviewed it, he's shared his feedback, and I owe a lot to him. We've been having Zoom meetings and talks over the phones, but he's a very down-to-earth personality, and I thought it important to mention him today. I also would like to thank somebody who is based in Siberia, but the reason why I mention her, of course, is because she was the one who created this book cover, this beautiful book cover, and the previous 2 book covers as well for Naomi Byron and for Vernon Hall. Her name is Jelena Zibbert. So I think, Jelena, you will see this recording at some point, so thank you so much for this beautiful poster, which to me looks more like a film poster. Okay, now I'm not going to talk about the previous books or anything. I am now going to focus on The Raven's Call. So, as Junaid Saab very rightly said, writing a book is not an easy job. It is a very, very cumbersome process. I took 10 months to finish writing this book, and I cannot even emphasize that the last couple of months was so extremely hectic and draining. It really took a toll on my health, emotionally, physically, and every other way. I have to say that this book is my magnum opus. Magnum opus just means it's my masterpiece. That's not to say that the previous 3 books weren't. I put my heart and soul in all of them. But when you, and if you, of course, decide to read this book, you'll know how much of my heart and soul I have actually put into the narrative. It's very fast-paced. The way I write my books is almost like I'm imagining a movie, and this is how I write my books, hoping for them to be adapted into a movie one day. So I hope that you feel the same when you read them. There are two main narrators in the book. Without going into the details of those, I'll just briefly tell you some of the themes that I've touched on in the books. So for those of you who may have read Sherlock Holmes or Agatha Christie, you would know that in the 19th century, we're talking about the late 1800s, forensic science was very much in its embryonic stages. We, of course, didn't have the privileges and advantages that we have today. So if you would recall from Sherlock Holmes, every time he would receive a note, the way to decipher its origin would probably be to smell the note, to see if there was some sort of a smell coming from it, some sort of a cologne, to see if there were any fingerprints on it, to see the sort of writing. Was it italics? Was it a regular handwriting? Did it look like an educated man's hand or an uneducated person's hand? And these are the sort of things that I've actually explored in the book. There are several references to British India, which I know most of you would find very interesting. There are some characters who spent time in India and have now returned to England. One of the main narrators, one of the main characters is in fact of Indian origin, and it is extremely intriguing. You also explore the sort of prejudices that existed at the time on either side, both within England and in India. There are themes of unrequited love, friendship and sacrifice, which of course are some of the important themes of the book. More than anything else, of course, as with my obsession with Gothic romances and Gothic horror, what haunts this book the most is this legend of the Raven, which of course I will talk about in some more detail later on. And this is the sort of guiding principle of the book. I have also focused on human psychology and human nature. And when you read Eldridge, all the other characters as well, and he provides an insight into the psychology of the various characters. So I have a few more points, but I know that we are probably running out of time. So I'm going to stop my speech now. And I'm going to start the performance, verbal performance. For that, I would request you to do one thing. I don't know if, no, I don't think the lights can be dimmed. That's fine. I'd like you all to actually imagine. And if you want to close your eyes, okay, can everybody just pay attention? If you want to close your eyes, please do that. Just imagine that you are no longer here. I know it's hard to imagine that this is going back in 1898, but you're in London. You're surrounded by a lot of snow. You have to remember that there's a lot of snow. This is the peak of winter. Christmas is just a few days away. There are no mobile phones.